If the maps of North America had been drawn just a little more honestly, the secret of Meridian Point would have changed the history of the United States forever. But the truth was buried twice, once by nature, once by men. The year is 1912. In a dimly lit hall of the Smithsonian Institution, a night shift archivist named Elias Turner leafs through a shipment of water-damaged materials recently discovered in an abandoned barn in coastal Virginia. Most of it is junk: rotted ledger books, moldy newspapers, cracked surveyor tools. But one object makes him freeze: a leather-bound journal with a burn mark across the spine. On its cover, almost erased by time, are 4 carved letters: M.P. 1661. Elias opens it carefully. The first page is written in a tight 17th century hand. To whoever finds this, on the shores near the 78th meridian lies a truth not meant for England, nor for any crown. Nathaniel Brooks, surveyor of the Virginia Company, Anno Domini 1661. Elias feels his heartbeat spike. The Virginia Company dissolved in 1624. No official expedition was recorded in 1661. Something is wrong. He flips to the next page. A map. Not just any map. A map of the Atlantic coastline showing a settlement that officially never existed. A perfect natural harbor, high cliffs, markings of fortifications, symbols of strange structures, and beside them, in neat ink, Meridian Point, abandoned for reasons that must remain unwritten. Elias whispers, This could rewrite our early colonial history. But what truly unsettles him is the final note, squeezed into the margin. If the point is ever found again, the curse that hollowed it once may return. God help the nation that uncovers it. Before he can read further, the hall lights flicker. A cold burst of air rushes between the shelves. Footsteps echo, slow, deliberate, though Elias is sure he's alone. He shuts the journal, looks over his shoulder. Nothing. Yet the feeling won't go away. Meridian Point was never meant to be found. Not in 1661, not in 1912, and certainly not now. Because every time someone has tried to reveal the hidden settlement, America has paid a price, in blood, in fire, or in silence. Tonight, as Elias Turner carries the journal to his supervisor's office, he unknowingly sets into motion the last chapter of a secret battle that began 2.5 centuries earlier, on a windswept peninsula that appears on no map. But the truth of Meridian Point, its rise, its fall, and the impossible events that unfolded there, starts much earlier. In the year 1659, with a young English surveyor whose curiosity would doom an entire settlement.
1. Landfall. The waves slapped violently against the hull of the Isabella, a 3-masted brig carrying 21 men and a single mission: chart the unclaimed coastal lands south of the Chesapeake before the French or Spanish could stake a claim. 23-year-old Nathaniel Brooks, the expedition's lead surveyor, leaned over the bow rail, inhaling the cold Atlantic air. He was not a soldier, not a nobleman, just a man with an uncanny talent for reading landscapes. His measurements were so precise that other surveyors joked he could see the meridians in his sleep. Behind him, Captain Roswell grunted, "Storm's shifting, Brooks. We anchor soon." Nathaniel nodded, but his gaze remained fixed on a strange vertical rock formation jutting from the fog ahead. It was like nothing he had seen, a stone pillar rising straight from the sea, too symmetrical to be natural. As the fog thinned, more shapes emerged. Cliffs, tall, blackened. A crescent-shaped harbor sheltered between them, and beyond that, a forest so dense it looked like a wall. Nathaniel's hand trembled. This place was not on any English map. "Captain," he whispered, "where are we?" Roswell spat into the sea. "Where we shouldn't be, boy. The ocean pushed us off course 2 nights ago. This isn't the Chesapeake. Could be Spanish waters for all we know." But the Spanish never reported cliffs like these, nor this towering stone pillar, nor, Nathaniel squinted, the faint line of smoke rising from inland. Was someone living here? Before he could ponder further, the ship jolted violently as the anchor dropped. "Prepare the landing party," Roswell shouted. Nathaniel's heart thudded. He had always dreamed of discovering new land, but something about this cove felt wrong, like it was hiding something, or warning them away. Still, his duty was clear. He stepped into the longboat with 2 Marines, a carpenter, and the expedition's physician, Dr. Alden. The moment their boat touched shore, Nathaniel felt it. A vibration, faint but unmistakable, through the sand beneath his boots, like the ground itself was humming. He froze. "Did you feel that?" The others shook their heads. Only Nathaniel sensed it, and it wasn't just underfoot. Some instinct awoke in him, ancient and primal, whispering, "Leave." But he couldn't. Not yet. 2. The first footprints. They walked toward the tree line, Nathaniel sketching rapidly in his leather-bound notebook. The cliffs formed a natural barrier on either side, creating a narrow peninsula, a perfect defensive position. The harbor could shelter dozens of ships. A settlement here would control the entire coastline. And yet, no records existed of any nation colonizing such a place. Dr. Alden pointed to the sand. Footprints. Nathaniel knelt beside them, brushing gently. Not English boots, not Spanish, not even moccasins. These footprints were bare, but the shape was unusual. Longer, narrower, the toe print slightly deeper than the heel. "Native?" Alden asked. Nathaniel shook his head. "Not like any tribe I've studied." The trail led into the thick forest, disappearing into shadow. Captain Roswell's voice echoed from the shore as he approached with more men. "Find anything?" Nathaniel hesitated. "Footprints and smoke inland." Roswell frowned. "We proceed carefully. No guns unless fired upon." As the expanded party entered the forest, the light dimmed instantly. The treetops were so tightly woven they blocked the sun. The air became cold, almost unnaturally so. A Marine muttered, "Feels like walking into a grave." Nathaniel agreed silently. Until they reached the clearing. 3. The structures. The clearing stretched wide and circular, as if carved deliberately from the forest. At its center stood structures, not native longhouses, not European cabins, but something else entirely. Low stone foundations, collapsed wooden frameworks, remnants of watchtowers. A fortified settlement, large enough for 200 people. Abandoned. Nathaniel's breath caught. "These structures," he whispered, "they're English." Roswell scowled. Impossible! Yet the evidence was clear. The angles of the foundations, the carpentry style, the remains of a palisade wall. This was an English colony. Nobody had ever recorded. Dr. Alden approached a toppled signpost. The carved letters were rotted, but still legible. M-E-R-I, the rest broken away. Meridian? Nathaniel whispered. The word stirred something in him, a memory, a warning. Then a shout, "Sir, we have a body!" They rushed to the far side of the clearing, where a skeleton lay half buried in leaves. Judging by the clothing scraps, it was a colonist, but the cause of death made Nathaniel's blood freeze. The rib cage was crushed inward, as if something large, very large, had stomped on it. No human could do that. Roswell whispered, "What killed these people?" But he never finished, because a second skeleton appeared nearby, and a third, and 12 more in a scattered ring, as if the colonists had died while fleeing outward. The settlement wasn't abandoned. It had been wiped out. Nathaniel turned slowly, sensing eyes in the forest, watching, waiting. And then he heard it. A distant, low rumble. Not thunder, not an animal. Something deeper. Something moving beneath the ground. The thing beneath the root line. The rumble swelled again. Not loud. No, that would have been less terrifying. It was subtle, like a distant drumbeat echoing through earth and bone. Nathaniel felt it in the soles of his boots, crawling upward through his legs until it settled in his chest like a trapped heartbeat. Dr. Alden froze. "Is that seismic activity?" Captain Roswell's jaw tightened. "Virginia isn't known for earthquakes." "No," Nathaniel whispered, "but something is moving." The men tightened their grips on their muskets. Clouds drifted over the clearing, dimming the weak winter sunlight. A cold breeze spiraled around them, carrying with it a faint, metallic smell. The smell of old blood. Nathaniel moved toward one of the collapsed structures, its timber blackened from age, though the scorch marks along the beams suggested fire had been involved. He ran his fingers along a charred plank. Someone tried to burn this place before leaving, or before dying. "Captain!" a Marine called out from behind a collapsed palisade section. "You'll want to see this!" They hurried over. A row of iron spikes, rusted but intact, lay embedded in the ground at the edge of the clearing. They were angled outward, like defensive stakes. But what caught their attention was what clung to 2 of the spikes. Fibers, thick, rope-like, and strangely pale, almost translucent. "Animal hair?" the Marine asked. Alden shook his head slowly. "Too coarse, and the structure, look." He pinched one between his fingers. The fiber stretched like sinew, then snapped. "This isn't from any creature we know." Roswell exhaled sharply. "Could be some unknown game in these parts." Nathaniel didn't believe that. Not with the crushed rib cage they'd seen. Not with the unnatural footprint-like impressions, forming faint patterns around the clearing. Something had hunted the settlers. But what? He turned to speak when the rumble beneath them stopped abruptly. The forest fell silent. Animals ceased their calls. Even the wind paused, as if holding its breath. Then came a new sound, soft, like something brushing against bark. Nathaniel whispered to Captain, "We're being watched." Roswell nodded once. "Men, form a perimeter. Muskets ready." As they moved, the brushing noise multiplied. Left, right, above them. Something, or many things, circled just beyond the tree line. Nathaniel's instinct screamed to back away, to retreat to the ship, but it was too late. From the shadows, a single stone flew out and struck a Marine square in the forehead. He dropped instantly, blood pooling beneath his temples. "Ambush!" Roswell roared, but the attackers did not rush in. Instead, they darted between the trees, fast, too fast. Figures, humanoid, but elongated, their limbs unnaturally slender, their movements fluid like shadows cast by a fire. Nathaniel caught only glimpses: a pale paint-streaked face, long black hair matted with earth, and eyes hollow, reflective, like the eyes of an animal that had forgotten it was ever human. Alden whispered, horrified, "These are not a tribe I know." Nathaniel could not take his eyes off them. Their bodies were thin, almost starved, rib cages sharp under tight skin, yet they moved with the grace of predators. Roswell fired his musket. The shot cracked through the air, echoing across the clearing, but the figure vanished before the bullet reached the tree. "They're too fast," a Marine yelled. "Fall back to the shore," Roswell commanded. But the moment they moved, the figures moved too, closing in, silently, strategically. Nathaniel noticed something chilling. They were driving the Englishmen toward the northern side of the clearing, herding them. Toward what? That's when Nathaniel saw it. A massive fissure in the earth, partially hidden by foliage. A pit. Deep. Unnaturally deep. "Stop!" he shouted. But it was too late. Two Marines ran straight toward the hidden edge and vanished with a scream. The ground swallowed them. Nathaniel sprinted toward the fissure, skidding onto his knees. He peered down, and his breath stopped. They weren't falling through empty space. They were entangled, wrapped in something alive. Long, root-like tendrils moved in the darkness, coiling, twisting, searching for more prey. The Marines thrashed desperately as the tendrils tightened around them like skeletal arms. Alden gasped, "What in God's name?" Before anyone could react, a loud snap echoed from below. The screaming stopped. The tendrils retreated into the abyss. Nathaniel staggered backward, trembling. "The ground, it's feeding." "Move!" Roswell bellowed. "We're leaving, now!" The men sprinted toward the tree line they had entered from, but the pale watchers moved with them, gliding through the shadows like ghosts, never attacking directly, only forcing them along narrow paths. Nathaniel realized the horrifying pattern. The watchers weren't trying to kill them. They were guiding them away from something, from whatever lived beneath the clearing. Why? Because the settlers of Meridian Point had been killed by it. And these watchers, these twisted survivors, they had learned to avoid it. Nathaniel grabbed Roswell's arm as they ran. "Captain, these people, are they protecting us or controlling us?" Roswell didn't look back. "We're escaping." They burst through the tree line and into the narrow beach corridor. The ship lay anchored offshore, small boats waiting near the tide. "Get to the boats!" Roswell yelled. But the watchers did not follow past the last tree. They remained at the forest's edge, staring with eyes full of warning or hatred, or maybe sorrow. One of them stepped forward, taller than the rest, face painted white as bone. He raised an arm and pointed a long, shaking finger at Nathaniel. Not at the group, specifically at Nathaniel. And then, in a broken, strangled English voice, the figure spoke a single word. "Return." The men froze. Nathaniel's blood ran cold. The figure pointed again, first at Nathaniel, then at the forest behind him, then touched his own chest. "Return," the figure repeated, "or all die." Roswell grabbed Nathaniel by the collar and shoved him toward the boats. "Move, damn you!" They ran, jumped into the waiting longboats, paddled frantically toward the Isabella. Nathaniel looked back as the pale figures melted into the shadows. The watchers had said only one word, but Nathaniel knew what it meant. He would come back, because they were not warning him away. They were warning him that something inside the forest was waking again. Something the settlers could not kill. Something that ate through wood, stone, and bone. Something that crushed rib cages like twigs. Something that lived beneath Meridian Point. And it knew Nathaniel now. It had felt him, marked him. As the boats reached the ship, Nathaniel whispered to himself, "I will return."
The Isabella rocked gently as the longboats were hauled aboard. The sky, once dim and gray, now darkened with an unnatural weight, as if the clouds themselves had followed them from the cursed shoreline. Nathaniel Brooks barely felt the deck beneath his feet. His mind was still in that clearing. The crushed skeletons, the watchers in the trees, the whisper of something alive beneath the soil. Captain Roswell snapped orders at the crew. "Raise anchor! We sail north until daylight!" The men moved with frantic urgency. Even the most seasoned sailors looked rattled, glancing back at the cliffs as though expecting something to crawl out of the earth and swim after them. Nathaniel leaned against the rail, shaking. He had seen fear before, but not like this. This was older, colder, the kind that lived in a man's bones. Dr. Alden approached, wiping sweat from his brow. "You all right?" "No, and neither are you," Nathaniel said bluntly. "I've seen plague victims, battlefield wounds, frostbite, but never anything like that. Whatever those people were, those watchers, they weren't savages. They were survivors." "Of what?" Nathaniel whispered. Alden looked toward the cliffs. "Something that shouldn't exist." A gust of wind rattled through the sails. Nathaniel shivered. Below deck, lanterns flickered with every swell. Men tried to sleep, but failed, tossing and turning in their hammocks. Nathaniel sat alone in the chart room, staring at the rough sketch he had made of the peninsula. Half-erased shapes danced in the candlelight as his hands trembled. He wrote one line beneath the map. The settlement was English, but older than any record. Someone had built Meridian Point long before 1659. Someone had erased it. Someone or something had kept it hidden. A sudden knock on the chart room door made Nathaniel jump. "Enter," he said. A crewman poked his head inside. "Sir, there's a sound you might want to hear." Nathaniel followed him to the upper deck. The sailors stood in a tight cluster, staring over the side. "Listen," one whispered. Nathaniel leaned over the rail. At first, he heard only waves. Then, faint, rhythmic, unmistakable, drums, beating from the direction of the cliffs they had left behind. Slow, measured, as if marking time for something rising. Roswell cursed under his breath. "They're warning us." But Nathaniel knew better. "It's not a warning," he said. "It's calling." As they watched, a faint orange glow flickered along the cliff tops, like torches moving in a circular pattern. The Watchers, performing some kind of ritual. Alden whispered, "They're keeping it contained, whatever it is."
Roswell barked, "All hands, double sail! We are leaving these waters!" But even with increased speed, the rhythmic beating followed them, echoing faintly across the waves until the moon was high. Only after hours did the sound finally fade, but the fear did not. Nathaniel returned to the chart room and continued sketching the cliffs, the clearing, the location of the fissure, and the broken word on the signpost. Mary... What was the full name? Meridian? Maryvale? Marytown? His mind spun. Finally, exhaustion overtook him. 2. The vision in the dark. Nathaniel slept, but the darkness was not empty. He found himself standing in the clearing again, but this time the settlement was whole. Smoke curled from chimneys, children ran between houses, men carried timber, women tended fires. Meridian Point alive. A woman approached him, tall, wearing simple colonial clothes, her face warm and smiling. "You're the surveyor, Nathaniel Brooks." He stepped back. "How do you know my name?" She pointed at his notebook. "You brought the same one the first time you came here." Nathaniel's heart thundered. "I've never been here before." She shook her head. "Oh yes, you have. Many times." "What are you talking about?" Her smile faded. "You never survive." Nathaniel went cold. Before he could speak, the ground beneath them vibrated, slowly at first, then violently. The woman lunged forward, gripping his arm. "You must close it," she whispered urgently. "The roots, the bones, the earth is wrong there. Close it, or the colony falls again." "What do I close?" She opened her mouth to answer, but suddenly her eyes widened with terror. A monstrous shadow rose behind her, towering, twisting, roots and limbs intertwined like a massive skeletal tree pulled from the underworld. Its countless tendrils reached upward. Nathaniel screamed and woke. Gasping, soaked in sweat, Dr. Alden hovered beside him. "You were shouting." Nathaniel sat up. "How long was I asleep?" "A few hours." Nathaniel rubbed his face, trembling. "I saw the settlement, alive, and a woman told me I've been there before." Alden frowned. "Dreams can be tricks of the mind." "No," Nathaniel said firmly. "It felt real, too real." Alden sighed. "What else did she say?" "She said, I never survive." Alden laughed weakly, then realized Nathaniel wasn't joking. "Nathaniel, we need to speak with the captain." 3. The captain's decision. Roswell listened quietly, leaning against a mast as dawn broke over the horizon. When Nathaniel finished describing the dream, the captain remained silent for a long moment. Finally he said, "Dreams are not commands. We will not return." Nathaniel clenched his jaw, but the watcher said, "I heard what they said, and I also saw men dragged into the earth. We are leaving. End of discussion." Nathaniel stepped closer. "Captain, if we leave without documenting this, history loses something vital, something dangerous." Roswell's face softened for a moment. "Son, some truths are better lost." He placed a heavy hand on Nathaniel's shoulder. "We return to Jamestown. We report nothing except storm damage and hostile natives. This expedition never saw a settlement. Understood?" Nathaniel's voice cracked. "Captain, understood?" Nathaniel hesitated. "Yes, sir." But he did not mean it. Not even a little. Something inside him, something older, deeper, pulled him back toward Meridian Point. He felt it like a hook in his chest. He would return, even if Roswell refused. He had to, because the Watcher's final warning still echoed in his mind. Return, or all die. 4. The storm that wasn't natural. Hours into their return journey, the wind shifted sharply. Clouds blackened unnaturally fast. Lightning cracked through the sky, forked and white, striking disturbingly close to the ship. Roswell shouted orders, "Reef the sails! Brace for—" A violent wave slammed into the Isabella, throwing men across the deck. Another strike of lightning illuminated the sea. Nathaniel froze. The water near the hull was swirling, not from the storm, but like something beneath the surface was twisting it. Alden gasped, Is it following us?" Nathaniel couldn't answer, because at that moment he heard it again, weak, faint, but unmistakable. Drums, coming from underwater. Nathaniel whispered, terror filling his voice. It didn't stay behind. Roswell grabbed a rope as another wave crashed. "Alden, get below deck! Nathaniel, tie yourself off!" But Nathaniel didn't move. His eyes were locked on the sea, now churning violently right beside the ship. A pale shape surfaced, not human, not animal, a root-like mass twisting in spirals reaching toward the hull. A tendril slapped against the wood with a thunderous crack. Roswell shouted, "Cut the ropes! Full speed!" But it was too late. One of the tendrils wrapped around the ship's rudder, splintering it. The Isabella lurched. Sailors screamed. The storm intensified. Nathaniel fell to his knees as the ship was dragged sideways into a massive wave. The last thing he saw before blacking out was the pale tendril tightening, dragging them backwards, toward Meridian Point, toward the cliffs, toward the thing beneath the earth. Nathaniel regained consciousness to the sound of creaking wood and the soft, rhythmic slosh of water against the hull. His eyes opened slowly. Above him, dim lantern light swayed gently. The ship was strangely still. No violent waves, no storm winds, no thunder. For a moment, he wondered if he had dreamed everything. But then the smell hit him. Wet soil, salt, rotting roots. He sat up quickly, heart pounding. Dr. Alden was sitting nearby, pressing a cloth to a bleeding cut on his forehead. "You're awake," Alden said softly. "Thank God." Nathaniel pushed himself to his feet. "The storm! Where are we? Did we escape?" Alden didn't answer. That was answer enough. Nathaniel climbed the narrow stairs to the upper deck. When he stepped out, his breath stopped in his chest. They were anchored, not by rope, but by massive, pale, root-like masses wrapped around the entire hull. And beyond the ship, the cliffs. The same cliffs. The same deadly shoreline. Meridian Point. They had been dragged back. Roswell stood at the bow, hands gripping the railing so tightly his knuckles were white. His weathered face looked hollow, defeated. "Captain," Nathaniel whispered. Roswell didn't turn. "It brought us back. The storm, the waves, all of it was controlled. We never had a choice." Nathaniel looked at the pale roots gripping the ship. They moved slightly, alive, tightening, releasing, almost tasting. "How do we break free?" he asked. Roswell laughed, the sound sharp and humorless. "Break free? Boy, we're lucky it hasn't crushed us already." Nathaniel swallowed hard. "Then what does it want?" Captain Roswell slowly turned to face him. "You." Nathaniel stepped back. "Me?" Roswell nodded. "The Watchers pointed at you. The voice spoke to you. Whatever damned thing sleeps under that soil, it marked you. Alden joined them on deck, breathing heavily. Captain, if that's true. It is true, Roswell snapped. That thing dragged an entire ship back to shore. That isn't nature. That's purpose. Nathaniel felt nauseous. The root-like tendrils shifted again, brushing against the hull like fingers tapping. Alden whispered, "It wants him to return." Roswell's jaw tightened. Then he'll return. But he's not going alone. Nathaniel turned sharply. "No, no one comes with me. I won't have more men die." Roswell stepped forward, towering over him. "You don't give orders here, and I will not let my men watch you walk into that forest alone." Before Nathaniel could answer, a sudden thud sounded against the port side. Then another. Then dozens.
Nathaniel leaned over the railing. Shapes were emerging from the tree line. Thin, pale, humanoid shadows moving toward the shore. The Watchers. They stood in a long line along the beach, unmoving, silent. Every one of them stared directly at Nathaniel. And then, as one, they knelt. Alden shivered. "What is that? A greeting? A warning?" Nathaniel whispered, "A demand." Then the tallest Watcher stepped forward. The same one from before, the one who had spoken. His face was painted white again. He raised both arms toward Nathaniel and screamed, not in pain, not in rage, but like a desperate cry across the sea, a word stretched too far, broken by suffering. "Return!" The sound echoed across the water. Nathaniel felt his chest tightening, his vision blurred. It was as though the word itself pulled at him. Roswell grabbed Nathaniel's shoulder. "Hold steady, lad." But the Watcher pointed again, first at Nathaniel, then at the forest, then at the cliffs beyond. Something waited there, something ancient. Alden swallowed. "Captain, if the Watchers are guiding us, not attacking, maybe they know how to stop the creature." Roswell's eyes narrowed. "Or maybe they're feeding it." Nathaniel shook his head. "No, they were terrified of the fissure. They lived hiding from it. They're not controlling it. They're surviving it." A low rumble sounded beneath the waves. The ship shuddered. More roots tightened around the hull, making the wood groan dangerously. Roswell cursed. "Damn it all! If we don't do something, the ship will be crushed." A tendril slapped the side again, harder. The message was clear. Go. Now. Nathaniel stepped closer to the captain. "Let me go ashore." "But no arguments. It wants me. Maybe if I go, it releases the ship." Roswell stared at him for a long moment. Then he nodded slowly. "We take a small party, 5 men. We escort you to the clearing, and then we return." Nathaniel shook his head. 3, no more. Roswell exhaled through his teeth. "Fine, 3. Alden stepped forward immediately. "I'm coming." Roswell glared but didn't argue. Nathaniel looked around the deck. "We need one more." A voice came from behind them. "I'll go." Thomas Hale, a rugged young Marine, stepped forward. His left arm was bandaged, but his eyes were steady. "This thing killed our men. If you're going back, I'm going too." Roswell gave a curt nod. "Prepare the boat." 5. The Forced Landing. The longboat hit the surf, sliding onto the sand.
The watchers didn't move. As Nathaniel stepped onto the beach, the tallest watcher lowered his head, as if acknowledging him. Alden whispered, "This is either the beginning of salvation or the end." Nathaniel walked forward. The watchers parted silently, forming a narrow path into the forest. The path led straight toward the heart of Meridian Point. Thomas Hale kept his musket raised. "Sir, these people ain't right." "Stay close," Nathaniel murmured. The air grew colder as they entered the trees. The forest was unnaturally quiet. No birds, no insects, just distant creaking, as if the trees themselves were straining. The watchers followed silently behind them, dozens moving like ghosts. Nathaniel whispered, "They're escorting us." Alden corrected softly, "No, they're guarding us. Something else is in these woods." Nathaniel's stomach tightened because he could feel it, a pressure in the air, a presence, something old, aware, watching from beneath the soil. Then the trees opened into the clearing. The settlement ruins looked even older than before, as if decades had passed since yesterday. Roots twisted around collapsed houses. The well had caved in. The ground pulsed faintly like a slow heartbeat beneath the earth. Nathaniel stepped forward, feeling a crushing weight settle over him. The fissure was open wider now, a gaping wound in the ground. A faint whisper seeped from the depths, not a voice, but many voices layered together. Alden clutched Nathaniel's arm. "Are you hearing this?" Nathaniel nodded slowly. Whispers rose like steam. They sounded like children, like prayers, like screams swallowed into the soil. Roswell Hale raised his weapon. "Sir, I don't think we should be here." Then the watchers stopped at the tree line. None entered the clearing. The tall watcher pointed at the fissure and spoke a hoarse string of broken words. "Close it, or earth break." Alden shivered. "Close it? How?" The watcher pressed both hands to his chest, then slammed his palms into the dirt, as if showing them something buried. Nathaniel suddenly understood. The settlement collapsed because something beneath it was opened, something they tried to seal, something they failed to stop. A faint tremor rippled through the ground beneath their feet. A whisper drifted from the fissure, and this time it formed a word. "Nathaniel." Alden's face went pale. "It knows your name." The ground convulsed. Thomas Hale stumbled back. "Sir, run!" But Nathaniel stood frozen, staring into the darkness below, because the voice was familiar. It was the woman from his dream. Her voice, calling him. Roswell had been wrong. This wasn't a warning. It was a summoning. Nathaniel stepped toward the fissure. Alden grabbed him. "What are you doing?" Nathaniel whispered shakily. I think she's alive." The ground split wider with a deafening crack, and something began to rise. Something enormous, something ancient, something made of root and bone and memories of everyone it had consumed. The watchers began to scream at the tree line. Alden yelled, "Nathaniel, run!" But Nathaniel couldn't move, because the thing rising from the earth was forming a shape, a tall skeletal form with glowing hollow eyes and long root-like limbs, holding a human shape at its center, a woman, the woman from the settlement, the one from his dream. She opened her eyes, looked directly at him, and whispered, "You finally returned." Nathaniel's entire body turned cold, and the ground exploded outward, and everything went dark. The survivor's mark. Nathaniel barely slept that night. The Isabella creaked under the weight of wind and tide, but it wasn't the sea that kept him awake. It was the image of the pale figure at the tree line, its trembling hand pointing at him, its broken voice whispering the word that refused to leave his mind. Return. Every time Nathaniel closed his eyes, he heard it echoing through his skull like a ghost trapped in bone. Just before dawn, Commander Roswell found him standing alone on the main deck, staring at the dark outline of the distant forest. "You haven't slept," Roswell said. Nathaniel forced a thin smile. "Neither have you." Roswell sighed. "I've been writing the official report, but something tells me no one at Jamestown is going to believe what we saw." Nathaniel turned slowly. "So, what will you write?" "The truth," Roswell answered firmly, "minus the parts that will make the Royal Council think the entire crew has lost their senses." Nathaniel swallowed hard. "The creature beneath the clearing. Were you planning to include that?" Roswell avoided his gaze. "I already wrote that the men fell into a collapsed pit. They're listed as drowned." "Drowned?" Nathaniel repeated. "Captain, there was something alive down there." Roswell's eyes hardened. "I saw what you saw, and I refuse to put it on paper." "Why?" "Because monsters," Roswell said quietly, "are only believed when they walk into a capital city and tear a building down. Otherwise, they're stories told by frightened sailors." He thought of the crushed rib cage they found, the tendrils moving in the darkness, the way the ground seemed to breathe. "If we don't tell them, others might land there," Nathaniel whispered. Roswell stepped closer, lowering his voice. "Listen to me carefully, boy. That forest is cursed, boy. The settlers, the pale survivors, the moving earth, all of it is beyond our understanding." He placed a hand on Nathaniel's shoulder. "And if you're wise, you'll never return there." Nathaniel felt the weight of those words. Yet the pale figure's command echoed within him again. "Return, or all die." He stared toward the shadowed shore. "Captain," he murmured, "what if leaving isn't safety? What if leaving is exactly the mistake those settlers made?" Roswell frowned. "Meaning?" "What if the thing beneath Meridian Point doesn't stay confined to the clearing?" Roswell froze. Before either of them could speak, Dr. Alden hurried onto the deck, clutching a small bundle wrapped in linen. "Captain, Nathaniel, you need to see this!" They followed him into the infirmary. Alden set the bundle onto the table and unfolded the cloth. Inside lay the pale, rope-like fiber they had collected from the spike in the clearing. But it looked different now, more swollen, pulsing slightly, like a piece of muscle trying to wake up. "What happened to it?" Roswell asked. Alden's fingers trembled slightly as he held a glass magnifier above it. "When we brought it on board, it was dead protein, some kind of organic fiber. But then," he pointed to a small cut on his palm, "I accidentally dropped a few drops of blood on it while cleaning the sample." Nathaniel's heartbeat quickened. "And?" Alden hesitated. Then he pulled back the cloth further. The fiber had split into branching filaments, almost root-like, and each filament reached toward the side of the table where the blood had dried. Like it remembered the taste. Nathaniel whispered, "It's reacting to blood." "Not just reacting," Alden said. "It's growing from it." An uneasy silence settled in the room. Roswell clenched his fists. "Burn it." "We tried," Alden said grimly. "But it doesn't burn. It only chars and then heals itself. Nathaniel felt cold trickle down his spine. Alden continued. This substance, whatever it's part of, isn't normal biology. It responds to blood, heat, and movement. He picked up a quill and gently touched the fiber. The fiber recoiled. Alden added, "It behaves more like a nerve cluster than a plant." He stared at it, horrified. "If a single piece can grow with blood, Captain, what about the mass beneath the clearing?" Roswell exhaled slowly. "That thing wasn't feeding on the settlers," Nathaniel said softly. "It was growing through them." Alden's eyes widened. "You believe it's expanding underground?" "Yes," Nathaniel said. "And I believe the Pale survivors, the ones who chased us, were not trying to kill us." Roswell stepped closer. "What were they doing then?" "They were trying to stop us from going near the ground that thing controls." Alden whispered. "Then they are not attackers. They're victims," Nathaniel finished. "Victims who survived by becoming something else." A quiet dread filled the room. Roswell rubbed his temple. "You think they were once settlers? Or another lost group? But whatever they became, it happened because they stayed too close to that thing." Alden leaned back. "It marks you." Nathaniel frowned. "What?" Alden pointed. "Your wrist." Nathaniel looked down sharply. Just beneath his sleeve, etched faintly on his skin, was a thin, branching pattern. Pale, almost invisible, but growing. A pattern that resembled the root-like veins of the tendril. Nathaniel's breath caught. "When did this?" he whispered. "Probably when the ground grabbed you, or when you touched the clearing." Roswell stared at Nathaniel as if seeing him for the first time. "Is it dangerous?" the captain asked. Alden hesitated too long before answering. I don't know." Nathaniel's chest tightened. The pale figure in the forest. The word he spoke. Return. He wasn't threatening Nathaniel. He was warning him. Because whatever was beneath Meridian Point had already begun marking him, claiming him, and if he didn't return, the mark would grow. The name that should not be spoken. The morning sun rose, but the deck of the Isabella felt colder than any winter wind. Nathaniel stood near the bow, sleeves pulled back, staring at the faint, branching pattern on his wrist. In the daylight, it looked worse, like tiny veins spreading beneath the surface of his skin, glowing slightly whenever his pulse quickened. A mark, a warning, a claim. He touched it lightly. It tingled, not painfully, but almost as if something beneath the skin was moving. Before he could study it further, a Marine approached. "Commander Roswell wants you below deck, sir, urgently." Nathaniel followed him down the narrow stairwell to Roswell's quarters. The captain stood at his desk, jaw tight, hands clenched, staring at a piece of parchment. Dr. Alden stood beside him, pale and shaken. "What happened?" Nathaniel asked. Roswell didn't look up. "One of the men we brought back, the one with the broken shoulder." Nathaniel felt a knot tighten in his chest. "Did he die?" Alden shook his head. "Worse." Roswell shoved the parchment toward Nathaniel. "Read." Nathaniel picked it up. The handwriting was frantic, panicked. Torn lines, uneven strokes, ink blots from trembling hands. "Something is inside the ship. I heard it whisper my name. It crawls between the beams, too soft to see, too heavy to ignore. I felt something touch my foot while I slept. Tell them, don't go back there. Don't dig. Don't disturb the root line." The last sentence was smeared with dried blood. Nathaniel swallowed. "Where is he now?" Roswell looked grim. "He jumped overboard at dawn." Nathaniel's breath caught. "He drowned?" "No," Alden whispered. "He didn't drown." Roswell's voice dropped to a cold whisper. "The water took him." A silence settled over the room like a fog. Nathaniel forced himself to speak. "So whatever was in that forest, it can follow?" Alden shook his head sharply. "I don't think the creature itself left the clearing." "Then how?" Alden pointed at Nathaniel's wrist. "The mark. It's not just physical. It carries something." Nathaniel felt cold sweat at the back of his neck. Roswell slammed his fist onto the desk. "Enough of this madness! We will reach Jamestown tomorrow. The council will decide what to do." Alden snapped. "We don't have until tomorrow." Roswell glared. "Explain." Alden placed a small metal pan onto the desk, covered with a cloth. "Before the sailor jumped, I collected the bedding from his hammock. I found this." He lifted the cloth. Nathaniel stepped back in horror. Inside the pan lay small, pale, root-like threads, the same kind of tendrils they saw beneath the clearing, only these were tiny, thin as hair, but writhing, alive.
Roswell backed away. "How did that get in his bed?" Alden swallowed. "I believe the mark on humans attracts it, even across distance." Nathaniel whispered, voice shaking. "So the creature doesn't leave the island." "But its influence does," Alden finished, "as long as the marked person remains alive." Nathaniel stared at his wrist, horror rising in his chest. If the tendrils could reach the ship, what else could they reach? Roswell drew his sword. "We burn the bedding, now." Alden grabbed his arm. "You can't burn it here. If it releases fumes, it's already spreading," Roswell roared. "We get rid of it before it infects the entire crew." Nathaniel stopped them. "Wait." They both turned. Nathaniel looked at the wriggling tendrils. "It's not just reacting randomly. Look!" The tendrils were moving in a clear direction, toward him. Alden breathed out shakily. "They want you." Roswell stepped protectively in front of Nathaniel. "Back away from him." Nathaniel stared at the pan, at the tiny living threads reaching toward him, at the mark slowly spreading under his skin. "They're following the same pattern," he whispered. "The mark and the tendrils." Alden nodded. "Because they share the same origin." Roswell clenched his teeth. "We should isolate him below deck." Nathaniel snapped. "You think that will stop it? If I'm marked, the ship isn't safe no matter where you lock me." Alden added quietly, "He's right." Roswell paced, breathing hard. "Then what the hell do we do?" Alden hesitated. "There may be only one answer." Nathaniel felt his stomach drop. "What answer?" Alden knit his eyes. "The mark wants to return to its source." Nathaniel whispered. "The pale survivor said the same word." "What word?" Nathaniel stepped back, repeating the memory that haunted him. "Return." A heavy silence filled the cabin. Alden finally spoke. "Whatever is beneath Meridian Point, it doesn't want to reach the world. It wants the world to return to it." Roswell stared at Nathaniel. "And now it's pulling you back." Nathaniel's heartbeat pounded in his skull. "So if I return, the influence stops." Alden nodded slowly. "If you go back,
alone. The tendrils will stop chasing the ship. Jamestown will be safe." Nathaniel whispered, "And if I don't?" Alden didn't blink. "It will spread. Through the ship, then through the colony, then through every living thing it touches." Roswell slammed his hand on the wall. "I will not sacrifice one of my men to that thing. There must be another way." Alden looked at Nathaniel. "There isn't." Nathaniel stared at his wrist. The mark pulsed. Once. Twice. Like a heartbeat that did not belong to him. He understood now. The pale figure wasn't warning him for his safety. He was warning him for the world's safety. He closed his eyes. "I have to go back." Roswell grabbed him by the shoulders. "No, I forbid it." "Captain," Nathaniel whispered, voice trembling, "if I stay on this ship, we all die." Roswell released him, shaking with anger and fear. Alden asked quietly, "When will you leave?" Nathaniel looked at the horizon, the faint outline of the cursed island still visible. Tonight. The night of no turning back. The sun fell behind the horizon like a dying ember, leaving the Isabella shrouded in a deep blue twilight. Waves lapped softly against the hull, but even the ocean sounded uneasy, as if it sensed what Nathaniel was planning. He stood alone at the stern of the ship, staring at Meridian Point in the distance. In the darkness, the forest looked like a jagged shadow rising out of the sea, silent, waiting. The mark on his wrist pulsed again, a faint glow beneath the skin, like veins filled with moonlight instead of blood. Nathaniel clenched his fist. It felt alive. Behind him, footsteps approached. Commander Roswell. "Nathaniel, I won't try to stop you again." Nathaniel turned. Roswell looked aged, as if the last 24 hours had carved years into his face. "You shouldn't come with me," Nathaniel whispered. Roswell shook his head. "I'm not. I'm here to give you this." He handed Nathaniel a small, leather-wrapped compass. Its brass casing was scratched, worn from years of storms and battles. "This belonged to my father," Roswell said. "It's always pointed true, even when nothing else did." Nathaniel swallowed. "Captain, I can't take this." Roswell stepped closer. "You listen to me, boy. You're not dying on that island. You hear me? You're not dying." Nathaniel forced a weak smile. "I'll try." Roswell placed a hand on his shoulder, gripping firmly. "The moment you return, I will fire 3 flares. I want you to follow the light back. I'll be waiting." Nathaniel nodded. A moment later, Dr. Alden arrived carrying a small satchel. "I packed bandages, tinctures, a lantern, and a few tools. If you see any sign that the mark is spreading, anything, you use the knife and cut the infected skin." Nathaniel quietly asked, "Will that stop it?" Alden hesitated. "Probably not, but it may slow whatever it's trying to do." Nathaniel took the satchel. He appreciated Alden's honesty, even if it wasn't comforting. Roswell exhaled heavily. "When you reach the island, find the clearing. Find whatever pulled you. Let it take the mark back." Alden added softly, "And do not, under any circumstances, touch anything that moves." Nathaniel managed a weak laugh. "I'll keep that in mind." The sky darkened fully. The sea turned black. Meridian Point became a silhouette against starlight. The small rowboat waited at the side of the ship. Nathaniel stepped toward it. "Wait," Roswell called out. Nathaniel turned. The captain looked at him, not as a superior officer, but as a man who cared more than he wanted to admit. "You come back," Roswell said quietly, "or I will personally come drag you out of that cursed forest." Nathaniel nodded once, firmly. "I'll come back." And then he climbed down the rope ladder and into the rowboat. The wood creaked beneath his weight. The lantern flickered weakly. The oars dipped into cold water. Roswell and Alden watched from above as Nathaniel began to row toward the dark island. Each stroke echoed like a heartbeat. The closer he approached the shore, the tighter his skin felt. The mark throbbed under his sleeve, glowing slightly through the fabric. The water around him grew unnaturally still. No fish, no wind, not even the faint cry of seabirds. It was as if the island exhaled silence. Halfway across, Nathaniel paused to wipe sweat from his brow, and froze. Something moved beneath the surface. Slowly, deliberately. A pale shape glided under the boat like a ghost in the deep.
Nathaniel's breath hitched. He gripped the lantern, lowering it over the edge. The water below glowed faintly, not from the lantern, from his wrist. Thin strands of the mark began to spread up his arm. "No, no, no," he whispered. He grabbed his forearm, squeezing the skin, trying to stop it, but the glow only intensified. Then a whisper rippled across the water, soft, distant, but real. "Return." Nathaniel whipped his head toward the island. A figure stood at the shoreline, the same pale survivor from before, still shaking, still pointing at him. But something had changed. Its body was covered now, laced with glowing, branching scars that pulsed like Nathaniel's mark. And behind it, shapes moved in the tree line. More figures, silent, watching, waiting. Nathaniel's blood ran cold. He rowed faster, not away, but toward them, because he finally understood. They weren't calling him back to harm him. They were calling him back because the mark demanded it, because something beneath the island had awakened, and if he didn't return soon, it would come looking for him. Nathaniel reached ashore and jumped out, boots sinking into the cold sand. The pale survivor stepped forward, slowly, trembling, but without malice. Nathaniel raised his lantern cautiously. "What do you want from me?" he whispered. The survivor lifted a quivering hand and touched the mark on Nathaniel's wrist. Instantly, Nathaniel gasped. A surge of cold shot up his arm, into his chest, into his skull. Images exploded in his mind. Settlers screaming beneath the roots, the ground pulling bodies apart, a pulsating core beneath the island, veins of living flesh spreading through the soil, a massive, ancient shape breathing in the dark. Nathaniel collapsed to his knees, clutching his head. The survivor released him, backing away. Nathaniel staggered up, breath trembling. "You want me to go below?" The survivor nodded weakly. Behind it, the others nodded too. Not monsters, not attackers. Victims trapped between life and death, still controlled by the thing beneath the clearing.
Nathaniel looked at the dark forest entrance. The path waited. A path he now understood led far deeper than any cave. It led to the heart of the curse. The mark on his arm glowed brighter, and the forest responded, its trees bending slightly as if welcoming him back. Nathaniel tightened his grip on the lantern, then stepped into the forest, into the darkness.
Final chapter of the Lost Archive of Ashford. The sky above Ashford turned an impossible shade of violet the moment Evelyn completed the activation sequence. The chamber beneath the lighthouse vibrated, ancient gears engaging, as if the earth itself had awakened after centuries of sleep. Michael grabbed the rusted railing. "Evelyn, whatever you're doing, stop! The whole coastline is shaking." She didn't move. Her eyes were fixed on the orb, the astral codex, now floating above the stone pedestal, spinning slower than before. For the first time since they found it, it wasn't humming. It was breathing like a living creature. Dr. Hale, though wounded and lying against the wall, coughed and pointed weakly. You stabilized it. No one in history has done that." Evelyn almost whispered, as if any louder sound might break the fragile balance. "I didn't stabilize it. I answered it." The orb flashed once, twice, and an expanding ring of light swept across the room. Everyone froze. The walls changed. Carvings rearranged themselves. Symbols uncurled like flowers blooming backward. Suddenly, Evelyn gasped. I can read them now." Michael stepped toward her. "What do they say?" She turned, eyes wide. "It's not a weapon. It's not a prophecy. It's a record of everything humanity forgot." Dr. Hale's voice trembled. "You mean the missing histories? The civilizations that disappeared? The events we only know as myths?" Evelyn nodded. "Yes, and is asking us to decide whether we want it all back." The chamber grew quiet, not silent, alive, as though every stone waited for the answer. The choice. On the pedestal, two symbols formed, one glowing gold, the other glowing deep blue. Evelyn explained slowly, the meaning pouring into her mind like a new language unfolding. Gold means release the knowledge. Blue means seal it forever. Michael swallowed. "If we release it, what happens?" She closed her eyes, listening to an echo only she could hear. "Humanity will learn everything it ever lost. Ancient power, forgotten science, real history. But it could destabilize nations, rewrite beliefs, collapse governments. Some might use the knowledge the wrong way." Hale whispered. "And sealing it? The codex will sleep again for another 1,000 years, safe, untouched. But the truth will remain buried, and the mistakes of the past may happen again." The three of them looked at one another. This was the moment all of Ashford's strange anomalies led to. The decision. Evelyn stepped toward the pedestal. Michael held her arm. "Think carefully. We don't know if we're choosing for ourselves or for the entire world." Evelyn nodded slowly. "I know." She lifted her hand. The orb glowed brighter. Hale closed his eyes. Michael held his breath. The world seemed to tilt slightly, and Evelyn pressed her hand on the blue symbol. The chamber erupted in a deep, resonating tone. Michael shouted, "Why? Evelyn, why blue?" She turned to him, tears in her eyes.
Because humanity isn't ready. Not yet. If the Codex survived 1,000 years, it can survive 1,000 more. Let the next generation open it, after we build a world strong enough to hold the truth. The Codex dimmed, drifted down, and folded into itself like collapsing starfire. A final beam of light shot upward, through the ceiling, through the lighthouse, into the sky, then disappeared. The shaking stopped. The room exhaled. The Codex was gone. Sealed. After. 3 weeks later, the lighthouse was declared unsafe and quietly closed by federal authorities. The government took control of the area, but they found nothing. No device. No chamber. No carvings. It was as if the Codex had erased itself perfectly. Evelyn returned to her research. Michael went back to his modest historical podcast, now suddenly gaining unexplained new listeners from all over the world. Dr. Hale retired and refused every interview. But something strange happened. Sometimes, at exactly 2:13 a.m., Evelyn's lights flickered the way they did the night the Codex first awakened. And once, only once, she heard a whisper. "When the world is ready, call us again."